The Indiana Department of Child Services just reported about a case involving a boy by the name of Christian Choate. He was locked up in a cage by his father and stepmother for about a year until he died at the age of 13. This is a really disgusting story, and the reason why I bring it up is because he just endured so much torture in the last year of his life. Okay, in fact, he died after he was so sick that he couldn't hold down food, that his father pulled him out of the cage, beat him up, and then threw him back in the cage. The next morning, his daughter found him dead. Now, Child Services would show up to the home and they would investigate to make sure that everything was okay. There were reports of abuse and neglect, and the father was so good at tricking them that they didn't know the extent of the abuse and they didn't know what was going on. But I'm bringing up this story because, once in a while you read something in the news and in the past, I've joked around about how you start to lose faith in humanity, but this is one of those examples where you read about a person who's so heartless that they can lock up their own child in a cage and torture them until they die. He later buried his son in the backyard and then moved out of the state with his daughter. And the little boy's body wasn't found. He was 13, but the body wasn't found until 2 years later.
Yeah, people like that, I really believe they mainly hate themselves, and they take it out on the kids, and for whatever reason in his twisted head, it must have been a manifestation of what he didn't like about himself, that he wanted to keep bottled up and wanted to hit and hurt, etc. Because, and I'm sorry for playing pop psychologist on, but because it's so grotesque, so terrible, that And I have a son, I can't imagine why you would do that to an innocent, defenseless kid. And it can't be what the kid did. I mean, that's obvious, right? So it must have been whatever he's projecting onto the kid.
Right.
And what would he project onto the kid but his own feelings about himself, since it's his son, And so it doesn't make it any more cruel. It's as cruel as it could possibly be. But it makes it a little sicker in a sense.
Right.
Because he's such a twisted individual.
Another point I wanted to make about this story is the fact that social workers have to deal with people like this on a regular basis. People that maybe haven't done the exact same thing, but, abuse their children in similar ways. And I just want to say that I think social workers always get the short end of the stick, okay? They always get portrayed as these terrible people that come into homes and they take children away, people who don't investigate enough. They always get the crap. And honestly, I give social workers a tremendous amount of credit, because if I were in situations like this where I were confronted by parents like this, I would want to get violent, okay? And I know that sounds terrible, and that's why I'm not a social worker. That's why I haven't decided on that career path. But it takes a really strong person to look at this situation in a calm manner and do whatever they can to help the situation and take the child into a better home. Obviously in this case, unfortunately in this story, they weren't able to see the neglect that was happening because the father was savvy enough in tricking them. But it just amazes me that people can choose this as a career and do this. It takes a really strong person. I don't know. So that's another thing that I took away from this story. Because I'm telling you, Cenk, if I saw something like that, if I were a social worker and I saw a kid locked up in a cage, starving and suffering like that, it would take a lot for me not to want to retaliate.
Yeah, I hear you, but that's not how it works.
Right, I know.
At that point, actually, you're scared for your own life. My wife, Wendy, was worked in Child Protective Services. And first, it's a really hard job because almost everyone is lying, okay? Mm-hmm. Whenever you go into a circumstance, because half the time it isn't true, or more than half the time it isn't true. It's part of some divorce proceedings, and one side wants to use it as leverage on the other side. Oh, they're doing this to the kid, they're doing that to the kid. And half the time it is true. And it's so hard to tell what's what. And then, some of the times, it's dangerous. Mm-hmm. Like one time, guy says to Wendy, hold on for a second, and then he rushes inside. He was already ranting like a madman, and he comes storming out. She was scared for her life. God knows what he could have gotten from the other room. Luckily, nothing happened to her in that case. Jeez. But, because, and then you got these volatile characters who might be abusing their kids, right? And then they're going to, vent that rage against you because you're the one coming to question them. You don't have any police backup. You don't have anything. It's a tough job, man.
It really is. And I mean, random shout out to social workers, but I think it's much deserved. We are wearing awesome t-shirts today. It's not as obvious as it should be.
Yeah, this is...
It's a Matador, Matador. I wanted a shirt that looked cute and was comfortable, and this was it. But unfortunately, the logo isn't large enough. It's very silky and soft. Do you feel the softness?